Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the very first ever Asheville Museum of Science and the Collider Virtual Science Pub. We have these science pubs every month, and we were kind of disappointed when the county issued their stay-home order because we knew we'd have to cancel our science pubs that we had lined up. And this was the first one. And so when I called Philip Gibson to share the news that we wouldn't be holding it, he said, well, we're doing webinars all the time for Radon with the state. Why don't you all go virtual? And it was like, oh yeah, we can do that. So a big shout out to Philip, who you'll hear later, for nudging us into the whole webinar world. So we do get to present this important topic to you all this evening. The way it'll run tonight, we'll have two presentations by experts, followed by a short, well, not necessarily a short, by a Q&A session. And you will submit your questions through the chat feature. Our moderators tonight are Amanda Bryant, the Executive Director of the Asheville Museum of Science, and Mary Spivey, that would be me, the Community Manager of the Collider. Right now, Amanda's going to give you a welcome from Amos.
Hey, good evening. I hope that you have a cocktail and beer and are ready to sit back and take lots of good notes and listen to these amazing folks who have some really cool information and some very serious information on the science behind radon. So we're really excited to partner with Collider and to make this available virtually. This is one of our first virtual events. We've been doing some virtual events with our younger scientists and supporting teachers and students and parents in their homeschool efforts. And it's really awesome to be able to serve our adults in this capacity. So if you're not familiar with the Asheville Museum of Science, we are a small but growing science museum in downtown Asheville. We predominantly serve
We lost Amanda.
We did. Wow.
I'm sure she'll come back soon.
Yep. And this is something that I kind of wanted to say. This is our first webinar, so we've practiced a lot, but things will happen. So, all right, while we're waiting for Amanda to come back, we'll move on a little bit. Mickey Snowden, the communications liaison at the Collider, is going to give you just a few tips and pointers on Zooming and how this evening is going to run. Take it away, Mickey.
Hey everybody, I'm Mickey. So just a quick Zoom tutorial for those of you who are new to Zoom. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see about 9 dots. You can click those dots to change your view from either gallery view or speaker view. Zoom typically will default your view to speaker view when you first jump on. So hitting those 9 dots is going to change you to gallery view. For this presentation, we're mostly going to have some slides, so it's not as important. But just know that you can switch back and forth between those two views using that button. Another thing is, if you are calling on a phone, please mute yourself. If you're calling on a smartphone, you should have a mute and unmute button on your phone. If you're calling from a landline or from a flip phone, you can dial *6 to actually manually mute and unmute yourself. So we just ask that you stay muted through this presentation. And if you have any questions throughout, just please put them in the chat. And at the very end, our panel will get to those questions. We do have a brief Q&A at the end. Additionally, we are giving away 50 free at-home radon testing kits. So if you would please email hello@thecollider.org, which I will write in the chat box here. And please respond with your name, your mailing address, and then if you would not like to receive our newsletters, please just specify that as well. Just say, don't want the newsletter. But you should, because it's really amazing and we work really hard on it. Let's see. So additionally, besides all that, We are going to put a donate link in the chat box, and we really would ask that you support the Collider. If you support climate science here in Asheville and the rest of the world, please consider donating, because there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into bringing you events like this. So yeah, without further ado, please enjoy.
Thank you, Mickey. Mickey is also going to be working behind the scenes to make sure everything runs smoothly. As far as the donations go tonight, normally for our science pubs, all donations are split evenly between Amos and the Collider, and that will also be the same tonight. So even though you're donating to the Collider, we will divide them. Many of you may know that the Collider and Amos share a building. So we're on the 4th floor of the Wells Fargo building in downtown Asheville. They're on the 1st floor, so we're close, and we know where each other one lives. So it's no problem with splitting our donations. So thank you very much. Radon, it's a big topic. A lot of information on radon and a lot of misinformation as well. We're lucky tonight to have 2 exceptional experts on the topic, and you will get the straight scoop on radon. Before we go to Philip and Brett, I would like to, we're just going to look at a quick video on someone's personal experience with radon. This gentleman is a Western North Carolina resident, and he has a 1-minute story to share with you about radon. So let's go and hear Eddie's story.
My name's Eddie Metcalf. I enjoy working in my yard, and I can't do that anymore because I'm missing most of my lung. They did a CAT scan of my kidneys. No more kidney stones, that's the good news, but we found a spot on your lung. That frankly scared the hell out of me. I hadn't smoked in 22 years. How could this happen to me? He said, well, you know about radon gas. Well, I heard about it. He said, well, the 2nd leading cause of cancer in America is radon. 22,000 people a year die from this. I literally left the doctor's office, got a test kit, put it in the house, and our result was 39.8. The upper limit is 4. We got to get this fixed. That was on a Monday, and on Wednesday, our mitigation system was up and running. Well, I think everybody should have their house tested. We'd never known we'd still be living there. I could get another tumor from it, but right now it's changing my life.
Okay, let's see, what have I just done? Stop share. Okay, there we go. Oh, this works. So yeah, that's Eddie's story. Another quick personal story is my own. I moved to Fairview and was just, I'd heard about radon, but didn't really do anything about radon because there's so much to do in life, right? And then the editor of the Fairview Town Crier wrote me and he said, called me and he said, would you write a story on radon? I'm a scientist. I said, sure, that sounds like a lot of fun. Let's write a story on radon. So when I was researching it, I came across a website where you can order a test kit from the state for $5. I said, well, if I'm going to be telling readers to do this, I should probably do it myself. So I ordered the kit, hung it up downstairs in the basement, and lo and behold, it came back with elevated levels in our house, which frankly, like Eddie, scared me. I didn't have the spot on my lung, but it still scared me enough to call Brett Strimple, who is our local mitigation specialist. He's also speaking tonight. And within a few months, we had the house mitigated, and I tested it again, and now it's below the minimum. So 2 stories of radon, and now I will turn it over to Philip Gibson, who will tell you some of the, who will now tell you a lot more about radon. Philip Gibson is the North Carolina Radon Program Coordinator, and he comes to us from his home. Take it away, Philip.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get underway. So here we go. The slideshow is presenting, is that correct? Okay, great. Thanks, Brett. All right, so Eddie's story certainly revealed this point that radon is the leading environmental cause of lung cancer in the United States. It's second only to cigarette smoking. And there's a number that we attribute to never smokers who have died from lung cancer, and that is 21,000 deaths every year. So radon being the leading environmental cause of lung cancer, and certainly there are a number of studies that if you're interested in those peer reviewed studies, I'm certainly capable of sending those to you. We have many of them on our website. But from that, from the Beer report, which is one of the studies, comes this number of roughly 19 to 21,000 deaths every year in the United States from radon-induced lung cancer. If radon-induced lung cancer was listed specifically in cancer mortality or cancer statistics, it would be in the top 10 list of causes of cancer in the United States. So that's what this particular table is to represent, is just that fact that you can see lung and bronchus cancers at the top. So you're looking at inclusion of smokers and such within that category. But if you were to remove the known variables like smoking, tobacco, or others, then you could look at that 21,000 number, radon-induced lung cancer. So what is radon? Well, radon is a radioactive particle. It's an element, it's a natural gas. You can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it. And it's really the result of the decay process, the natural decay process of uranium, thorium, other radioactive elements found naturally in rock, soil, and groundwater. The specific thing they should note, one of the many science points of this, is that it has a half-life of 3.8 days. So the decay process is a part of, and the decay products from radon is really what's causing some of that issue of increased lung cancer. So if you look at the decay process, and I only put this in here because this is a science pub, but if you look at the decay process starting with uranium here, and you look at the bottom numbers of each icon, this is the life or half-life of each one of these elements. So when coming down to radon, you're looking at 3.8 days, but it's really polonium-218 and polonium-214 that deliver the majority of radiation dose to the lung. So those are really the elements, if you will, that are bombarding as we breathe them in. They're bombarding the tissue of the lining of your lung. So when going back, also note that we're looking at alpha particles, alpha, beta, gamma, so forth. Not so forth, but alpha, beta, and gamma. So when you're looking at alpha particles, the way that that would enter into your body is through inhalation. Alpha particle in this representation shows that it can't penetrate paper, beta can't penetrate aluminum, gamma can't penetrate lead. So the way that the alpha particle is going to enter into your lung or into your stomach is by ingestion or inhalation. So, you know, I've already said, hey, you can't see it, smell it, taste it, so forth, but there is a way of actually seeing alpha tracks. So when the energy is expended or as the decay process happens with the uranium, we can see that with, and I'm going to play that, but first, this is a fish tank, if you will. This is uranium-238 here, and what's around it is light, and it is at a cold temperature, and there's isopropyl alcohol that's within it that's going to capture through the vapors the image of the alpha track. So as the uranium-238 is decaying, right, these long tracks that you see are alpha particles, are alpha tracks. So there is a way of seeing this. So if you can imagine in a home, when someone tests for a level of radon in your home, you're measuring really how many decay products are in that air that you're going to potentially breathe in. So again, I've already mentioned that we either inhale it or we ingest it, and in this picture or diagram, you're looking at inhalation. So when it comes in contact, that alpha particle comes in contact with the tissue, the lining of your lung, and it hits or damages the DNA strand within that lining, that's the beginning of the potential for cancer. The cancer really is when the DNA is not healing properly. So that constant bombardment, again, the level that you're measuring, is really to find out how much bombardment is happening in your lung from the number of particles that are in the air. So it's an alpha particle. It can only enter through inhalation or ingestion. But in a home, how does it get into the home? Well, first and foremost, any home is susceptible to elevated radon levels. So it's a misnomer that it's just in your basement, for example. And it can be a home with a crawl space. It could be a home that is a slab on grade. It could be a manufactured home with siding or rather skirting around the base, preventing wind from diluting it underneath, if you will. And it can also impact high rises, condos, townhomes. So the diagram on the left shows you some of those pathways. Of course, in a building, you may have voids where the electric or the plumbing was not filled in properly. You may have windows cracks that are from either natural settling or the joints between walls and floor. Maybe the sump pump is a pathway. And I won't be going a lot into this, but it's also possible that if you're on a private well, that could be the pathway for the radon to increase in your home. So when you open up the shower or when you do your dishwasher or washing machine, those are opportunities for gases to be released into your home. So because there's a lot of climate change and climate discussions that go on at the Collider, so Brett has provided me with a few slides and asked me to go over a little bit of this, and there actually is a case example that he has that we'll show you later in the slides. But when you're looking at how a home actually is drawing in gases, it's safe to say in a very general way that every building is like a vacuum, drawing in gases at some level. And how do those buildings become vacuums? Well, here are three examples of how that could happen. So the wind effect outdoors, the stack effect where heat rises within a building, or combustion and ventilation within the actual building. So this case example, and Brett, we didn't rehearse this, but I'm going to go ahead and just speak to what I've learned. This is actually a test in a mitigation project that Brett was involved with, and he sent me this reading. So what this is specifically is a test result. The average from this test result is 2.8 picocuries per liter. And when looking at this over time, which was started in April 11th and ended on April 14th, so this started around 10 a.m. and I believe it ended about roughly the same period of time. And what's interesting about this is that on April 11th, we had zero precipitation. This is in Bostic, North Carolina, by the way, in Rutherford County. And there was a 9-mile sustained wind. So this is NOAA data, by the way, Brett, that I pulled off the internet. So we're looking at 9 miles per hour sustained wind on the 11th. But on April the 14th, when the storms came through, we had gusts up to 52 miles per hour, but we had 25-mile-an-hour sustained winds with 2 inches of precipitation. So you see how the weather events were impacting the radon level in the home. Brad, anything you wanted to add to that? Okay. So historically, we've believed, and this is everyone, believed that radon was really found mainly in Western North Carolina. And certainly geologically, we have susceptibility to, granite and uranium in the soil. But over time, we've gathered more and more data. And what this map shows is test kit data from roughly 1996 to, well, roughly 2014-15. This is on the Center for Disease Control's environmental public health website. They have a tracking website, and I'm sure the Collider has a link to that, or they can provide you with that if you want to have them do so, or contact me. But the point of this is that all the counties that are in red have had test results that were in excess of 4 picocuries per liter. And you can see what the yellow and the orange reflect there. This map is really taking test kit data that is from the 5 different manufacturers within the United States. So there's AirCheck, of course, the test kit that we'll give you, we're giving away, and there's RSSI, there's Alpha, there's ProLab. So all those companies make test kits, and when a consumer goes out and purchases one and does a test, that's what this data set is showing you, or where that data comes from. If you were to go to this map, you could actually click on each county and find out how many tests were conducted in that county. So kind of give you an idea of why maybe you would have yellow out here. There's very few tests that have been conducted in here, and some of this is actually federal and state public lands, if you will. This is the zone map that was used back in the late 80s, early 90s. This is not a map that you should make a decision as to whether or not you test your home or not. That's what people are using this for, and it's unfortunate. This was really a map or data that was collected in order to help guide local governments and state governments to know where to focus limited time and money, resources, staff. But we now know that it's a statewide issue, and we should be focusing energy throughout the state. So there are issues related to radionuclides in groundwater. And I know we're speaking specifically about radon, but radionuclides include uranium, radium, so gross alpha, gross beta, and those issues have become a really big issue in Wake County. Wake County has, as you can see, this geological formation. It's the Rollesville, R-O-L-E-S-ville granite area or geological formation. And from that, there is radon emanating and getting into well water. And unfortunately, in this area, there are a number of homes that are on private wells. And so Wake County has a fantastic website that you should check out about testing and some of the data that they've collected. But you can tell that there are other areas in the state where this may also be happening. We don't know because we're unsure of any testing that's occurred in those other areas. So again, I zoomed in on this just to reiterate that it can be a pathway for well water, and essentially it's coming in and being released into shower, washing machine and such. And again, inhalation. I should point that there is data that shows that there are issues related to radon ingestion and radionuclides for resulting in things like stomach cancer. So going back to air specifically, and the numbers that Eddie mentioned. So there is a number in which we make a strong recommendation for you to consider mitigation, and that's 4 picocuries per liter. That's an average number of a test that's gone over a period of time. Hopefully the test has been conducted at least 46 hours. That's what the best practice is. The test kits that we are giving you will allow you to test for a minimum of 3 days, up to 7 days. So the more data you have, obviously the better number, or you can draw a better conclusion from. But it's fair to say that the number that you get from a 3-day test kit should be enough information to make a decision as to whether or not you should mitigate. Looking at the numbers though, you can see that at 4 picocuries per liter, if that's your test average, then your likelihood is 7 out of 1,000. Now, if I had those kind of odds with the lottery, I would play the lottery. So that's a high level. That's a high risk. And if you've ever smoked more than 100 cigarettes in your life, as an ever smoker, your risk is 62 out of 1,000. So the reason to look at this table is also to say that at a level of 2 picocuries per liter, if you're an ever smoker, then your risk is still 32 out of 1,000. So it's not fair to make decisions based off of just a number of 4, whether it's 4 or more. So 2 actually has or comes with risk. Regarding water, I want to hone in on this number related to radon in water, and that's 10,000 picocuries per liter. So again, 4, so you're looking at 4 for air quality as being a trigger, if you will. 10,000 picocuries per liter is the trigger that we have where we strongly recommend that you mitigate your home. Now, we do ask you to consider mitigation if it's 4,000 to 10,000, but we strongly recommend it if it's 10,000 or more. The important thing to know is this: you test your home for air level. Just pretend that your air level comes back at 5. And you're on private well, and the next question should be, well, where's this coming from? Well, the step that you could take is to test your well water for radon. And if your radon level in your water comes to 50,000, then you can make an assumption that maybe all of your air level is the result of the well, because we know that for every 10,000 picocuries per liter in your water, it may elevate your air level by 1. So thus the 5 and 50,000. So the test kit on the left is what we're giving away for you all to test your homes. But if you're in a real estate transaction or you're in some situation where you're needing to show credibility in the test result, then we recommend strongly that you hire a certified radon professional to conduct the test. And what we're hoping is that there are no rules, laws, or regulations in North Carolina pertaining to radon, and certified professionals certainly know how to use this monitor on the right. It doesn't have to be a Sun Nuclear. There's many different models that are out there. And the test result that you saw from Brett a moment ago is from a continuous radon monitor showing you hour by hour what's happening. Other continuous radon monitors also measure humidity, barometric pressure, and they also have a tamper device on them, or a way of seeing if it's been tampered with. So if the windows have been opened or the machine was taken outside or something like that, the monitor is actually going to show you if that's happened. So how do we fix this? Well, Brett's going to go into it more specifically, but I wanted to give you some visuals. He and I talked about this. What we all encourage builders to do is to build in a radon system into a new home. And the first step really is looking at a passive system, so using the heat stack event, other variables that were in that first couple of slides in the beginning of looking at how weather impacts. So, you know, in this, you're seeing basically a crawl space, or maybe this is a slab on grade with gravel underneath. And you're essentially drawing a PVC pipe through the home. It's going to be inconspicuous because you're going to put it in a closet or something. And you're going to install a junction box at the top so that if needed, you can cut the pipe inside the attic and install a fan that would make it an active system, thus creating more suction in that system. So I've already described this, so I'll go on to the next one. And then the other building practices that help, they are not the fix, but they help. And that is filling in those voids that I mentioned about with around electrical or plumbing that were not sealed before, sealing up the cracks that were mentioned. So basically creating barriers for that gas to be drawn in. And in some situations, particularly for those homes that have a really tight envelope and for condominiums, that may be in high rises and such, that if you're not treating the entire building, maybe an individual unit in a condo is being treated, but you have these energy recovery ventilators. So you're bringing in fresh air, releasing back outside, exhausting really the air from inside. So there's a little statement that I make often, which is dilution is the solution to radon pollution. So if you look at this particular system and scratch your head about it, it's really doing just that, trying to dilute what is inside the home. For well water, I'm not really going to go into this in depth, but if you're interested, you can contact me. In general, for treating radon in water, there's two systems, two types of processes for treating the water. One is a granulated activated carbon treatment, so it's basically a filter system, and the other is an aeration system. And they're very complex and certainly a lot more than what I'm giving them time for right now. Radon is a priority issue for the state cancer control plan. There are a number of activities that have resulted from that. I will be, unless the conference is canceled, I'll be vendoring, and we are actually sponsoring a speaker at the North Carolina Family Physician Association coming up in Asheville this September. Again, trying to inform a number of different user groups. We do have this flyer that if you're interested, I can get it to you digitally or in print form. We're hoping that builders, realtors, anyone engaged in the public and teaching science or about lung cancer and such to have this flyer. So the action steps that I have for you is to test your radon level in your home. That's what the test kits are for. You can call me on my cell phone and let me know what you have, and we can talk through the process. If you have a radon mitigation system, one of the things that we know is there's a lot of people who just make an assumption that the system is in the home. It may have been installed in the home back in the 90s, and know that fans have a life warranty of 5 years, a life of roughly 10 years at best. So you need to test every 2 years, no matter if you have a system or not, to make sure that it's doing the job. And always consider hiring a certified professional in both testing and mitigating your home. That's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Brett Strimple now. Brett is a certified radon professional. He is certified with the National Radon Proficiency Program. Am I correct in that, Brett?
Yes, you are.
All right,
Yes,
super.
you are.
And so I'll turn it over to Brett, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Philip. I appreciate that very much. Philip brought up some really wonderful points. But let me just introduce myself real quick. I'm Brett Strimple. I'm the owner of Integrity Radon Control. I've been in business now since 2000, and been actively mitigating in Western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and Western Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee for the last, since 05, since 2005. So I've been around, I've seen several thousand systems. I think my count's somewhere up in the 3,000 range right now. At any rate, it's something I am very passionate about, very, you know, radon is real. I've seen it. I've seen the experiments like Philip was showing you. I mean, you see the activity of that radon, and I don't want that happening in my lungs. You see it under certain scopes, and it looks like a snow globe, what you're breathing in every day, and it's real. It's real. A couple things I want to go over. Mainly what my company does is we don't really get into the testing. I can answer some questions about the testing, but I do the radon mitigation. I take care of it once the problem's discovered. The reason for that, it's just my company's philosophy is that I believe it to be a conflict of interest for me to test the radon level of a system that I installed myself, because, you know, quite frankly, I could skew the numbers if I wanted to. and give you false information. Not to say that that happens, but I don't want it to be an accusation that ever comes my way. So thus I opt to do it that way. As Philip was saying, there's a lot of doubt and a lot of uncertainty when it comes to radon gas because so many people, it's something you can't see, smell, or taste. So if I can't see this, how do I know that it's actually an issue? Well, the only way to do it is to test for it. Actively, people are testing more and more, and thus it's turned out to be a very much a going concern in this area. One thing I will tell you is that radon is, we are in like radon central as far as the country is concerned. We got Philip right here representing us for the state right here in Western North Carolina. The biggest association is the American Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists located right here in Mills River. So it's a very much a going concern right here in our area. But let me go over just the basics of radon mitigation. As I'm sure Philip can, I could put you all to sleep here for several hours if I were to be allowed to talk that long. So I'm gonna be pretty clear and concise about how we get rid of it. Okay, you find out you have a radon level. Now what? Well, what we do is we're looking to install a mitigation system. Now, there's several different kinds of mitigation systems. The proper term for a radon mitigation system is called a subslab depressurization system in a basement situation or a slab situation. If it's a crawl space, it's a slightly different name, called a submembrane depressurization system. I won't go way into all that, but I'll just give you a brief outline. Basically, what we're doing is we are taking the floor of your house and we are putting it under a negative. So in other words, we're using a fan like this to draw the gases up and out through the floor and up, out, and so that we exhaust it in such a fashion that the gases aren't going to come back into the house and raise your radon level rather than lower. There also is the other system I was mentioning was the submembrane depressurization system. It has another component to it in that we have to seal the crawl space. We end up using a plastic like this. It's black on one side, white on the other, and it's got a reinforced stitching in it so that this is the way we're doing it these days. It used to be we could just use visqueen, but this is what we're doing these days so that you have a long-lasting product. Now, unfortunately, it's a crawl space, and it's essentially a crawl space encapsulation. If anybody has seen it, has seen or priced that, you know that they can get pretty pricey when you're dealing with crawl spaces. But I'm getting off subject here. Okay, so you have this radon problem. We come in, we drill a hole. As Philip was talking about, we create a suction pit and we draw those gases up and out of the floor. We're doing two things when we're doing that. We are, number one, we're causing a ventilation process to cause the gases to want to pull up and out of the house. But beyond that, we're doing probably the bigger thing that we're actually doing is we're changing the pressure dynamic so that there was a existing pressure on the up in your breathing space, and there's a pressure below your breathing space. We're equalizing them or creating an opposite effect. Thus, the radon is deterred from coming up into the house. Philip mentioned, I get this question all the time too. Okay, Brett, what happens on the system that you can't get the radon, the house rather, that you can't get the radon level down? Well, Philip mentioned the energy recovery ventilator, which is really a common system that we've been doing in the last few years. What happens is we run into situations when we drill down into the basement floor and we find a material down under the floor that's not capable of pulling air through, such as sand or dirt. A lot of houses, especially houses that were built pre-1990, were built right over top of dirt. It's not wrong. It was the way it was done at the time, but it makes it very difficult to move air through. Well, in those cases, we have to do something. So as Philip was talking about, we have to dilute the air. And how do you dilute the air? You got two options: either leave a window open, which will mitigate your house, or you have to do a controlled situation where you use these ERVs, which is controlling the airflow. Let me see here. Okay. Oh, he talked about radon test kits. One thing I wanted to mention to you is there are some really good new homeowner variety radon test kits out there that we're seeing in the field. I've actually field tested several of the brands, and I am finding them to be terrifically accurate. They have some that will even report directly to your smartphone. There's some that are just no bigger than the size of a deck of cards, and they work fabulous. Just something you may want to consider. You're not going to beat the professional. You're not going to beat the equipment like this to do the testing with unless you're willing to spend thousands of dollars on it. But these are little devices. You can actually buy them on Amazon for just over $100. So, you know, it's, in my opinion, it's worth it. Something you can do and monitor your situation. Passive systems. Philip talked about the passive system. I want to mention a couple things about that. One of the big questions that we always get is, why are they not building these into houses? Well, they are. I don't know, I probably have 15 or 18 builders that I work with. And they hire me to come in and put these passive systems in. But beyond that, we in the industry are trying to get the construction industry as a whole to be putting these in on a regular basis, and actually even more so doing them correctly. There is a part of the code book that is dedicated to this. It's called Appendix F. It's part of the International Building Code, but the problem is it's not adopted by areas. I looked it up just out of curiosity, and they had some interesting ways of an interesting way of putting it, so that they are to use this information, the zone maps that Philip was talking about, where it shows the red areas where the counties are that are in what's called a zone 1 area, which means you have the potential to be above 4 is high. But I looked it up, and it has it actually listed out by the county. Here in North Carolina, Allegheny, Buncombe, Cherokee, Henderson, Mitchell, Rockingham, Transylvania, and Watauga are all listed as Zone 1 counties. Now, this information is probably a little dated. It's from August of 2018, so it's probably even more updated. The maps that Philip are showing are actually using data that's built from CDC, so it's much more accurate than this. But this is what the building industry is using to determine whether or not they should put the mitigation systems in the house. If you're building a house, you know somebody building a house, I highly, highly, highly recommend having them tell your builder that you want a passive system. Very easy, very reasonable to put in at the time. And a passive mitigation system done properly will mitigate your radon level, cut it about in half, is what the studies have shown. So you may or may not have to put a fan in it. I myself encourage all my builders to actually just go ahead and put the fan in, because it has other aspects or other benefits to the house, I should say. Let's see here. What else could? Okay, one last thing I wanted to mention, and I'll turn it over to questions. Is one of the questions that comes up to me is a lot of the houses that I deal with, you have to understand, are houses that were done. I mitigate as part of the closing process in a real estate transaction is primarily where I get my business. I do get business from just concerned citizens, especially right now with everybody at home and their families are playing in the basement. I've gotten many calls over the course of the last couple of weeks because of the virus. And I'm trying to let people know, don't be scared, but be aware. I mean, it's a long-term effect, but something that should be definitely dealt with. But Philip had mentioned about closing up some gaps, doing some caulking, caulking your gaps. The reality of all that is, and he was saying, and I just want to re-emphasize, it will help. It absolutely helps, but it is absolutely not going to fix it. You know, Philip mentioned that alpha radiation can be stopped by a piece of, gamma radiation can be stopped by a piece of paper. Alpha radiation can be stopped by the human skin, but alpha radiation, it takes lead to stop it. So caulking a couple of gaps is, I'm sorry, I got those backwards. Alpha can be stopped by, okay, you know what I mean. So you still have other components of your molecule that can still do some damage here. So please keep aware of that. I think, oh, one other real quick thing. There is another big misconception that happens a lot in the real estate industry, but could happen anywhere. People ask me a question, like they'll have a house that has been unoccupied for 3 months, 2 months, a year, doesn't matter. And they ask me, they say, well, it tested high. And so obviously it tested high because it wasn't it's been closed up, not aired out, and so forth. And I have to tell them that, okay, I understand what you're saying, but the protocol on doing testing is your house has to be closed up 10 hours prior to you testing. So your house will reach its equilibrium inside of 10 hours. So it doesn't matter if your house has been closed up for 10 hours or 10 years, your radon is going to come back just the same as it would in either case. Now, it's not to say that that's not to say that if you open up your windows and live naturally in a house, that your radon's going to be that high. When you're doing a radon test, a short-term radon test, you are measuring what I like to call your radon potential, because you're creating a worst case scenario. So you have the potential of that level. The house gets closed up, you know, wintertime, nobody going in and out, it could reach that level. So it's potential. If you wanted to do your actual radon level as to how you live in the house, it's a different kind of test. It's called a long-term test. And they're also reasonably priced. They're not that hard. And you test the house for at least 90 days, 90 plus days on the test. And that will tell you what your radon level is, because it's how you live in the house. It's how, that's really what you're looking for, is, I open up windows. I don't open up windows. I like air conditioning, blah, blah. It just tells how you're living in the house. So hopefully that shed some light on that. And I'd like to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Brett. That was between you and Philip. I think now everyone has a really good baseline for radon. Good radon 101. We had a couple of good questions that popped up towards the beginning. Why do I keep doing that? Excuse me. The first one is from Stephen, and it was, let's see, 617, here it goes. This one is something I've been thinking about too. If I had my home tested, but also have a well, should I have my well tested too? So you guys can both address that, or Brad, if you feel like you are the best one. But yeah, how I'd like to work questions is that I'll open it to one, but the other presenter can, Philip, you can come into it, add your 2 cents.
Okay, yeah, I'll take this one on. A great question. I get that one all the time. The answer to the question is, I can't tell you whether your radon level is high based on what your level is inside of your house. Once again, the only way to do it is to have your water tested. Once again, not a very complex test, very easy to do. You put this little spigot on your outside spigot, run it for 10 minutes, fill up a vial and ship it off to a lab, and they'll tell you what it is. I will tell you that inside of this, inside of the 15 years that I've been doing business in Western North Carolina, I have not seen an abundance of high levels. Doesn't mean that yours wouldn't be high, but I have not seen it. I've actually only installed one radon in well system, and friendly competitors that I know are about the same as I am. So I can't tell you that you shouldn't do it because I don't know, but I will tell you that I know, like for instance, in the New England states, it's incredibly prevalent up there, and they're doing radon mitigation systems in wells all over the place. In this area, it's not near as common. Philip?
That's interesting, Brett, because I think people look at that map that Philip showed, right? Philip, maybe you can address this. And there was a big purple swath through our portion of the county. Philip's muted. Nope, no, he's not. Philip, we can't hear you.
Sorry, it was me. I had it on mute. So our response is that you should first test your air. If this is to Stephen or anyone else, if your air level is elevated, then we recommend that you find out where the source is. And it may be, you don't know until you test, it may be from your well water. And so that would be step number 2, would be to test your well water. Let me back up and say this. So if you use a test kit, the one that we've given out, right, and you get a high level from that one test, we recommend, and protocols are, that you follow up with a second test. So the second test is on you. They retail for about $17. And if you get an elevated level from the second test, where you just take the average of those two, then you'll be able to act on the number or not act based on what your result is. So if it's over 4, obviously you may consider to act, meaning hiring a certified professional to mitigate your home. After the second test, though, if you find that you have an elevated air level and you're on private well, then you may want to look at your well water or test it to see if that could be potentially the source. That will then help guide as to whether or not you're going to have the air system or the active depressurization system, or one of the ones that Brett was mentioning, or if you're doing a well mitigation system. So I've put Wake County's link, their website, on radon and water. So there's a lot of information about testing and the results that they've had. As they're estimating, of the 20,000 homes in the northeastern part of Wake County that are presumably on private wells, that roughly 5,000 have elevated radon levels. So they are seeing a 1 in 5 or so ratio in terms of the numbers of homes tested or wells tested and what the high levels are. So it's a significant issue, and really they didn't know this until testing began. So the point well taken from Brett is that there's not a lot of testing in wells in other areas, not just Western North Carolina, but in other areas of the state. So we would like, I would like to see personally more investigation around this to see if we do have an increased issue. And certainly I'm in conversations with Ted Pierce from the Division of Water Quality and with Rick Wooten here with the Geological Survey of Western North Carolina. So these discussions, that I've been to Collider, and we've had discussions as well as some potential research around that. So we don't know until you test. And that's the point that Brett also made.
Excellent. So that is a good segue to, before the next question, is just to remind everyone that if you have not yet signed up for your free test kit, please go to our website. It's called, or the email address, which is hello@thecollider.org, and put your name and mailing address in there, and we will mail you out a free test kit. Because the more people test, the more we can make that map more accurate, the one with all the red in Western North Carolina. And let's see, this is from Abby Malmberg with Amos. Is there a type of radon that is most commonly found in the homes? Alpha, beta, gamma? And does the kit test all the particles or just one kind?
So the test kit, yeah, so that I've already provided a link there as a response, which is how do the different test kits, not just the one that we're giving away, but there are several different types of testing devices out there. So take a look at that link, and the question really comes down to a test is really measuring decay products. So what they're doing is they're analyzing in whichever way the test kit, the test kit that we're giving you has charcoal within it. And so it's absorbing decay products. And there's a way that they measure that in the lab in Mills River, North Carolina. There's others that are like a petri dish or have some kind of medium where the decay products plate or settle out onto it. They count it with a microscope, so they're looking for specific impacts on that. There's others that have an electrical charge to them. So each one of them measure differently, but really what they're doing is, and I've shown you that decay chain, it's measuring a variety of decay products.
Anything to add to that, Brett?
No, he nailed it.
All right. Well, that seems like the end of our questions. Anybody else out there before we close this up? We'll think about it. I'll yammer for a minute. Again, we've only gotten 6 inquiries for these test kits. This is, I know it's not a big deal, but it's time. This is only a $5 charge normally, which I know you're thinking is not a big deal, but you don't even have to go online to fill out the form, right? It'll come right to your home if you just go to that email address and drop in your name and address, and we will send it right to you. The cool thing is, after your 3-day test period, you just seal it up, put it right back in the mail, and there's no charge to you at all. Then you'll get your results back fairly quickly within a day of them receiving it at Mills River. So think about that. And if there are no other questions, I think we will call this a science pub. We really appreciate Philip and Brett sharing their expertise tonight. For every one of you for coming tonight. This is our first one, as I said before, and we are just happy that this will work. We'll probably continue to do these until we can all meet in person again, which I hope is really, really soon. So until then, from Amanda Bryant of Amos and all of us at the Collider, we wish you a very happy evening, very nice evening, and be kind and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.